What is this? Is this another chat stream? Yes, and it's going to be another chill stream. I don't really have much say in the matter because of the way things are. 1:23 in the morning at the Geek House, and I am going to be very, very chill, very, very talking like this because I don't really have much choice in the matter because I feel absolutely shredded. But I'm going to press on because we've hit a milestone here on this YouTube channel. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay, and I absolutely feel like a mess right now. Got the thermometers out and all kinds of other stuff, but it's probably too low now because I'm drinking plenty of fluids. And what is that? Cough drops. Too much of them, though, gives me the sugar effect as opposed to the sugar-free ones, which have sorbitol, and too much of those is like taking a laxative. So not the sort of thing I want to be doing if I want to be doing any streaming. So what's the story? I caught somebody's something or another throat bug at work a couple of days ago. Guy was covering his coughs, but he wasn't wearing a mask. So you're like, well, that sends all the crap right into your hand. Then you hand me a piece of paper with that hand, and then I don't use the hand sanitizer or whatever and stuff like that. Hand to mouth, oh, it's over. You know how it goes. You know how it goes, and there's a whole bunch of crap going around. COVID is just one of the many things that's going around all over the place right now. So this is not COVID, though. I already tested. Twice, actually. I did two. I have those tests from when our COVID response here in the United States was actually still being funded, and you could actually order tests from Uncle Sam. So I actually had to throw out the ones from earlier in the year because they expired. So it's cool that I have had so few close calls with COVID that I never got to use most of the tests in the first bunch. The second bunch, though, is the ones from a different company, and those have an expiration date of December, so I have until the end of the year to use them, and then got to go to Walmart, pick up some Binax tests or something like that. The thing is, though, out here in the woods, there probably isn't very much demand for COVID tests because you have all these conspiracy wackos out there who are just going to pretend they don't have COVID if they get it, and that's how, unfortunately, some people are going to get it. You got the BQ variants going around, and I could do a pandemic rant on, the BQ thing, but I can't think of a really flashy title for one of those things. So, but the current BQ variants evade antibody treatments like Evusheld and monoclonals, so those are off the table. You have to hope you don't get like a Paxlovid rebound or something like that. The thing that bothers me the most about COVID is the cardiovascular side of it. This thing was putting 30-something-year-olds into the hospital with strokes back in 2020, pre-vaccine, by the way. So we know it's the virus doing this and not some rare vaccine side effect. So there's always been that, and then there's always the problems of blood clots and other crap like that. And then there's that situation with what's-her-face over at CNN, whoever that reporter was that just died a couple of days ago, cardiac arrest or a heart attack or something like that. She was only 49. When you go digging through her tweets, she had COVID in September. So the problem is probably the most insidious form of long COVID out there is the cardiovascular side effects. Things like positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where the minute you stand up, your heart starts racing and you have to sit back down, things like that. And of course, the comment that I believe was Mike that sent that in. Let me go to see if I can do this without Firefox bloating up too much, crashing everything. Was it Mike that said that he's suffering from long COVID in the comments? That let me just see this here. I take these stories very, very seriously because I know it's out there. But we had the conversations about sleep apnea and stuff. Cool. The I love you spammers aren't bothering me as much as they used to. Who is it that said that? Who is it that said that? Yeah, so I'm going to be coughing a bit and I'm going to be a little rough because I'm pretty shredded right now. Here it is. Yeah, this was Mike's comment. And I've heard of this before, where you lose your sense of taste and then it comes back scrambled. So things literally taste like crap because this virus unfortunately munches on nerve endings in your brain. That's what screws things up. There's also ties to dementia and other stuff. Just 2 years ago, people were crafting conspiracy theories that this was a biological weapon that leaked from a lab. What happened to all that now that the election's coming up? It's like, I'll be very glad if the United States government decides to get some sanity again after the midterms are over. So a couple more days of mask being a dirty word. Though I can tell you, I probably wouldn't be sick right now if the guy who was coughing all over the place, handing me a piece of paper, wore a mask. And I'm not talking about COVID stuff. I'm talking about the regular stuff. The reason why in various Asian countries it's tradition to wear a mask during flu season and stuff like that. It's the reason why, you don't want people getting whatever the crap is that you have. You do something about it. Even my dad, when I was growing up, he would actually wear he would tie a t-shirt. There was one time when he got something and he didn't want me to get it because he didn't want to have to pay extra for childcare, send me to more sitters' houses if I got sick and I couldn't go to school. So he went totally ballistic with wearing something over his nose, staying away from me, washing his hands obsessively to make sure I didn't get whatever he got so I wouldn't be out of school. But see, that's what caring about other people looks like. Sickness goes around and you decide, hey, I don't want to get other people sick, and you actually give a darn about someone else other than yourself. Something that is dreadfully lacking in certain parts of the United States right now, where it's very, very, very trendy to be a total asshole to everybody around you. And I don't care if I get demonetized. I'm not going to use substitute swears like, oh, shoe shine polish. I want to get straight to where the rubber meets the road here. That's exactly the sort of behavior that this entire whatever is encouraging here. Let's read Mike's comment. It's from 2 weeks ago, but it's from 2 weeks ago. He said, I was talking about recovering from, not eating enough over the summer, lost weight a little too fast and had complications because of it. So Mike says, I think I had the opposite problem with you as the weight. And I caught COVID in late 2020. That's pre-vaccine. My taste didn't come back for over a year. And when it did, it was all distorted. Everything tastes like little crap. And I couldn't even swallow food without gagging on it because of how bad it tasted. Only thing I could eat was certain fruits. After 2 months of that, I was down to 117 pounds at age 31. Yeah, that's terrible. I think I was 117 pounds when I was a junior high kid. It's like, this is a side of COVID that no one ever mentions. Oh, people mention it. It just gets buried. Mainstream media doesn't talk about it as much as they should and stuff like that. But I am very, very familiar. Those of you suffering from long COVID, I'm very familiar with the complication where your taste buds get scrambled and everything tastes terrible. It's like, imagine hoping and praying that you heal from that and you don't spend the rest of your life literally with everything being like eating Bean Boozled jelly beans, the bad ones. That sucks. Just totally sucks. That's why I give a darn about this stuff. That and the cardiovascular side of it. I mean, I'm over 40 now, so I should be concerned about these kinds of things, even if people think I'm worrying too much and in too much of a rush to get old. I can't say I'm in a rush because I'm already there. It's like this gray stuff didn't come out of nowhere, And you get to the point, you're old when you start feeling it when you get up. Stuff that wasn't there before, sluggishness, the whole 9 yards. Nice to see, though, that whatever was going on with the internet has smoothed out, so I might be able to look at a faster internet speed once I get out of this money hole that I've fallen into with all this garbage that's been going on for the past several weeks. And so it is in the midst of all this crap, and it's in the midst of all this crap that I am muscling forward, despite this throat bug, to talk about building computers. I've been building computers for 20 years. It is early November of 2022. In early November of 2002, the computer that was supposed to get me through college didn't. The power supply flaked out. The thing was restarting all by itself, and at its worst, it was browning out inside the case, the old HP. It was restarting all by itself, and when it came back up, the hard drive wouldn't detect because it lost power. Turning the whole thing off and back on again would fix it every single time. So that was the catalyst that got me into PC hardware. The computer you folks who follow my channel know as the Silver Bullet was the result of that. No, it wasn't a reference to, was it Coors that was considered the silver bullet? It wasn't a reference to the beer that uses the silver bullet as the tagline. It wasn't a reference to that. And it wasn't a reference to the business thing where an overly simplistic solution is supposed to solve all of a business's problems. It was fast and it was silver, because back then computers could be silver. I was using a Chief Tech Dragon style case, which was basically what Alienware was using when they were first getting going as a luxury brand. So as far as I was concerned, I was building my own luxury computer, even though I wimped out on the processor because I used an AMD Athlon XP2000, which didn't have a heat spreader on it. So there was a risk of cracking the die if you put a big heat sink on it and it wasn't straight. So there's some horror stories about people cracking die. So I had Multiwave Direct do it for me. They put a stupid little 60mm aluminum Spies box on it with a 60mm fan. You can imagine how loud that was when it spun up. This thing ran hot, like 55 degrees Celsius with a maximum temperature of 90. Yeah, it sucked. But it was mine, you know? My own self-designed system. And isn't that how it goes when you do things for the first time? Like when you get out on your own, you rent your first apartment or wherever, and there's nothing in it. You might sleep there with like a blanket on the floor and a pillow. You might sleep on the floor with literally nothing in the room, nothing in the apartment, but you're going to sleep there instead of at home because it's yours. This is your first taste of independence as an adult. So it doesn't matter how crappy the accommodations are. If it's just you and a blanket and a pillow on a hard freaking floor, you sleep there staring at the ceiling because it's your first taste of independence and you love it. No more dealing with mom and dad's little rules. No more getting up for school, da-da-da. You might have to get up for work, of course, you know, stuff like that. But that first taste of adult freedom, so to speak, some people are going to get kind of a bomb chicka wow wow because I said adults. But that first taste of you getting out on your own and making your way in this world, that's kind of what my horrible little computer was like. Oh, sure, it ran hot. It ran off an Athlon XP 2000 plus. It was an EPIX 8K38 plus motherboard, firmly within the capacitor plague generation, which killed the system within 3 years. But it was my own system that I built all by myself, and when it ran better. Sure, I used the horrible Turbo Link power supply that came with the case until I learned about upgrading power supplies. Sure, I did a lot of stupid stuff. And you know what? I was so afraid of taking off the heatsink from the processor that I actually bought some aluminum funnels from, I think it was One Cool PC back then. A PC modding for like custom water cooling and stuff like that. Think like an ancestor of frozen CPU. It was called One Cool PC, and I accidentally shipped it to my folks' house, and they're like, "Why are we getting a random box for you from One Cool PC?" I'm like, I sent it to the wrong address. But so I actually used two aluminum funnels. Actually, something like that. No. I used an aluminum funnel on the processor. It was a horrible aluminum Spies 60mm heatsink with a 60 to 92mm fan on top, and then a One Cool PC branded Panasonic Panaflow or something like that. 92mm. You might have seen it. You might have seen the fan in some of my tech videos over the years. But it was a 92mm fan funneling down to a 60mm heatsink. And it made it quieter, but it didn't make things cooler. I eventually had to grow, a spine and be willing to change out heatsink compound. That didn't happen until my 2005 system. The 2005 system was an Athlon 64 4000 plus. Finally had a heat spreader on it, didn't have to worry about cracking the die, and worked with heatsink compound for the first time ever. Well, I used a stock cooler, so it had pre-applied spread method stuff, but oh well, it was a start. But that's the way that this stuff goes. 20 years ago, it's crazy to think that it's been 20 years since I first got into PC hardware. I was into PC software long before then. I was making alert sounds in the Macintosh System 7 1 days in the 90s, and I even got in the paper when my school's computer lab got upgraded. Part of the article they wrote about, what students were doing with the new technology was me programming custom alert sounds into the Macintoshes, Power Mac 6166s that they had at the time, and stuff along those lines. So yeah, drink plenty of fluids when you're not feeling well. So my computer was basically a rough draft for what would eventually become Monolith. And so we fast forward to today, 2022, 20 years later. Monolith, about 20 years later, I have Monolith, which is designed incredibly well, 140 millimeter fans. Don't have to run the fans full speed most of the time, especially during the colder months of the year. I manually control the fan speeds and usually just run them at like 50% speed or something using my my fan controller. Usually just run them at 50% speed using my fan controller most of the time during the colder months of the year, and it's really quiet and it stays cool. It doesn't really get too hot. Just go dust it out every so often, and of course there's dust filters, so it can save a lot of dust. And because it's Define R5, the dust filter comes out the front instead of the back, so I don't have to walk around back to clean the dust filters out. Just whoosh, put it under the faucet and clean it out like I'm doing dishes, and then put it back in when it dries out. There's also one in the front too. Monolith is chugging along. It's an event if I ever have blue screens. There's only a couple of weird things that happen. You've probably seen some of them in the streams. You might have seen where, for some reason, something disconnects over USB and then reconnects a second later. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I still haven't figured out what's doing that. And it's probably too much power and using USB hubs, and I got to get rid of the hubs now. There's too many devices nowadays that use too much power. So I have to look at the number of USB ports, what type they are, and how much current they can handle when I talk about things like plugging in webcams and stuff. Even keyboards at fancy lights and stuff, and the power that they use. And stuff along those lines. Things like that. And so this raised the question, of course, of building a new computer for the 20-year anniversary of all of this. And I decided not to do that. I wrote in a community post about Windows 11. My first experience with Windows 11 was at work. And so now that I have it at work, I'm going to be installing it on Nerdovo so I get used to it at home as well on a non-primary system. Because there's some very serious limitations of Windows 11 in the name of security. So for 20 years, and I can hit the pop the start menu and see it in Windows 10 right here. For 20 years now, actually even further than 20 years, because I first started doing this with Windows 2000. For about 20 years now, I've had the equivalent of like a quick launch dock above my auto-closing start menu in Windows. So I'd have all my major programs, my web browsers, emails, Excel. I could put files in there. That's more of a thing at work. But I've always had a toolbar, a quick launch bar, Windows XP in 2000 style, on my taskbar. You can't do that in Windows 11. You have to dock programs, and I don't even think you can display what the title of anything. You have to work off of icons and stuff. So it's almost like a full copy of Windows 11 reminds me of an unregistered copy of Windows 10 where you can't customize anything. Either that or I haven't used Windows 11 long enough, but I've been doing some digging around and reading about all of this. And yet Windows 11 in the name of security is a bit more limited. The biggest thing I hate about Windows 11 is that the start menu seems to be like software controlled. Maybe it's because of the low power processor on the net top that we use at work. The net tops are using at work these days, although those are Core i5s. So low power Core i5s, they still have a bit of punch to them. I've run some tests on them before. But when I can click the start button and it takes like 10 seconds for it to open up and then it auto closes a second later so I don't get to click on anything, that's a bad UI. I have better luck right-clicking the start button. So, needless to say, I am going to run Windows 10 completely into the ground. Monolith is going to stick around until Windows 10 goes EOL and or EOS. And I am predicting, just like I've been predicting all along, that Windows 10 is the new Windows XP. When Windows 10 is slated to go end of life, end of support, people are not going to want to get rid of it. Just like what happened with Windows XP. I mean, this millennium, literally every other major version of Windows has sucked. Let's be blunt here. When I was in college, well, let's see here. Windows 3.1 was a gold standard for Windows in the early 90s. Windows 95 and 98 were similar, except for a few improvements in 95, 98, and they sucked. We can also lump in Windows Millennium Edition to that. They ran the DOS core completely into the ground. And the Windows 9X and Millennium Edition era, that version of Windows, yeah, you could game on it, and there was games in the 90s that run off of that Windows, but it was very, very flaky. This is where, you know, if you made regular use of your computer, you would eventually start blue screening for no reason under normal use. I remember shop instructors in high school that would make fun of me because my computer would start crashing because it was running Windows 98. It wasn't fun. Now, oh, you're tinkering with it so much, using all those themes like the space theme and stuff from Microsoft Plus. That's why your computer keeps crashing. So I leave it on Windows 98 default with the green background and the whoa every time it starts, and it still crashes under normal use. So yeah, Windows 3.1 was like a gold standard for business in the 90s. Then came the Windows 95, 98 ME era, where the DOS core was run completely into the ground and it sucked. So over to the NT core, finally using it for something other than business OSs like Windows NT. You have Windows 2000 and XP, which were good. You know, I started the silver bullet out with a dual boot, Windows 2000, Windows 98. It's the reason why I own a retail copy of Windows 98, because my Windows 2000 was an upgrade. My Windows 2000 CD was an upgrade, so I bought a retail copy of Windows 98 and set up a dual boot. Until I got to that point where, you know, one of the things people said in college, the solution to everything was to get XP. Get XP, get XP. Windows XP was like the panacea to all your problems on your computer. You're having problems with your computer, the solution was to get XP. And XP, I went with XP Professional because there were some minor kernel issues with the home edition, and I was on a college network, so I wanted the fancier stuff to be, you know, get familiar with it, so I know how to support the business side of it. Whenever I, you know, went off into the business world, it was good when I was an IT support specialist for a couple of years. I ran the same version of Windows at home that we were running on the computers all around the work sites. So that was always a good thing. But yeah, Windows XP was good. People didn't want to give it up. It's like Windows Vista came out. Oh, this sucks. Why should I get it? There were people out there that actually didn't want Windows 7 because XP was good enough for them. And there's still some people out there that are they're using Windows XP as their current OS with like third-party upgrades and service packs because they liked it that much. So even though it's only a 32-bit OS, unless you get the very special but rare 64-bit edition. So Windows XP, very, very well loved. People didn't want to give it up. That's the history that I think is going to repeat itself when Windows 10 goes EOL, EOS. Then Windows Vista came out and it sucked. Too much hardware, a little bit of flakiness here and there. Windows Vista could actually shut itself down with its own data execution prevention thing. So if you're left with a blank screen, it'll pop up that says, Windows Vista was shut down for security reasons or whatever. And then what do you do? So Windows Vista sucked. It was like the rough draft for Windows 7, which became another standard. Now, I realize Windows Vista and Windows 7 were similar stylistically, but there were some notable differences. Windows Vista eventually turned out to be the rough draft for what Windows 7 became. And Windows 7 was pretty good. I have plans for a retro system with Tuxedo, setting that up for a Windows 7 retro system with an SSD. So, you know, hopefully I can still get patches and updates for Windows 7. Windows 8 sucked. People didn't like the tablet interface, especially when they're still using desktops and things like that. There's Windows 8.1, which was the consolation prize, but the turd Shiba was a computer that I had that originally ran Windows 8, and then eventually Windows 8.1. I upgraded to the beta version of Windows 10 when Windows 10 came out, because Windows 10 was what Windows 8 should have been. And that's the position we're in right now. So the 3.1 era was the good one. 9598 ME, the DOS core being run into the ground, sucked. XP 2000 era, good. Vista sucked. 7, good. 8 sucked. 10, good. 11 sucked. Sucks. So maybe I'll be able to go to the version of Windows after. So here's my plan. My plan is to run Windows 10 into the ground on everything. I'm not going to go do some hack job. You can get past the security requirements to run it on the Delosaurus. Not while it's, not while it's still an actively supported OS. So Monolith cannot use Windows 11. The processor's too old. So we'll run Windows 10 into the ground on this thing. Until Windows 11 catches up, there's no reason. Why should I move to an inferior Windows before give Microsoft some more time to figure out why people don't like Windows 11 and get that addressed? But I am absolutely not going to settle for a nerfed start menu taskbar because somebody at Microsoft is trying to be chic like that. I'll be all stylish. This is very trendy nowadays, so we're gonna do it this way. And like, isn't that what Microsoft does every other version of Windows? They get too far ahead of what their customers want, and I think they can pull a Steve Jobs, where they can create something and make customers want to have it. That doesn't always work. Not everybody is like Steve Jobs. And the times that Steve Jobs was successful with things like the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad was stuff that it makes sense that those kinds of technologies would go mainstream when you think about it. Versus their predecessors that had weird stuff going on, like the pop-out physical keyboards on Blackberries and other old phones back then. And then tablets did exist before the iPad. The form factor we now know as a tablet is a descendant of the tablet PC, which was an overpriced, overly expensive laptop with a touchscreen that could fold over on top of the keyboard and function like a tablet. My last doctor before the APRNs took over was trying to use one of those, and he had to use a stylus because it was a resistive touchscreen. So he's poking away with a stylus at this flipped over laptop. That's what tablet PCs were. They'd cost at least $2,000 in early 2000s money. They were too expensive, and only nerds or businesses with a lot of money like medical orgs had them. So yeah, the tablet is just something that makes a lot more sense, even though the original iPad was made fun of when it came out. And people were cracking feminine hygiene jokes about it and saying, what's the next Apple product going to be called the Tampod? Yeah. And then there was the whole technical side of it, that you needed a whole bunch of expensive add-ons to make an iPad into something like a laptop. Today, you have Bluetooth cases with a keyboard. So you pop the tablet in and poof, it's a laptop. Plug in a mouse use a Bluetooth mouse, and you have something that works like a regular computer with your tablet. Just poke the screen for iOS. And actually, a lot of mobile devices support mouse pointers, including Android on phones. I can hook up a Bluetooth mouse to a smartphone and use a mouse with my phone for whatever reason, if I really wanted to. Unless the newer Androids don't have it. I have Android 10 on my phone, so I don't know if that's changed since then. Yeah. But what was that? Something popping over there? Or we have more mice coming in. It's 60 degrees out tonight. That's one of the reasons why I'm burning up so much. So it's like summer all over again. It's humid out too. Foggy. Yeah, real nice weather for November. Actually, yeah, I'll take that over shoveling snow. Thank you very much. But bring on the global warming. Better than a polar vortex, and it's like 20 degrees for 3 weeks. We get those usually in late winter in New England. But either way, it's one of the reasons why I leave a Christmas tree with no ornaments up until springtime as my booyah to winter. But we'll save that discussion for some other day. Stuff like that. So, yeah, Yeah, every other version of Windows sucked, and now here you are with Windows 11 is the one that sucks. So is Microsoft going to actually get it right without having to release another version of Windows that basically does what Windows 10 did? I mean, you can see the difference between 10 and 11 via my adoption of it. I was an early adopter of Windows 10. I put it over Windows 8 and didn't look back when it was in beta. Turd Sheba, Windows 10 beta. Tuxedo, Windows 10 beta. Monolith, Windows 10 beta. I was glad to say goodbye to Windows 7. Took the free upgrade. Windows 10 beta. Actually, no, I didn't build Monolith until Windows 10 was out. So, but yeah, Tuxedo went to Windows 10. You can see it in my tech videos from like 2015 or so. But yeah, Windows 10, early adopter. That New York trip in spring of 2015, it's a really risky move, putting Windows 10 on the turd Sheba, taking it out using hotel Wi-Fi out in New York for that kind of stuff, for that New York trip. It was a risky move, but I had that much confidence in Windows 10. It was a risky move, but I had that much confidence in Windows 10 that Windows 10 would, I had that much confidence that Windows 10 would be usable out on the road. And so it was cool and all. Stuff like that. Then Windows 11, I don't touch it because I hear all these bad things about it. And it's restricted, and it's, you know, there's these problems with hardware TPM. My system supports hardware TPM. Just the processor's too old. Literally, the motherboard should support Windows 11. It's the processor that doesn't support it. So, and Microsoft hasn't caved on it. They want that security. They do updates. MultimediaJay doesn't. This PC doesn't meet the minimum system requirements to run Windows 11. Oh, so sad. I'm really going to miss it. Well, here's the thing. Couple more years of Windows 10's official lifespan. Microsoft extended the lifespan of Windows XP because people didn't want to get rid of it. That's my prediction, is that that Windows 10 is Windows XP 2.0. And if not, maybe by then processors will be a little more mature with the DDR5 generation, and I'll build something then. I absolutely will have a new computer at some point, a Monolith 2.0 for the 2020s, but I don't want to do it right now. As we know, and this is probably worth talking about. So besides all the crap that's going on with my health and stuff like that, as I've turned 40 and felt old very, very quickly, and the blow to the head at work and all the complications from it, besides all of that, I mean, I'm at 20 years since I built my first computer. I would be spending, and first of all, I had a bit of a rose-tinted nostalgia goggles problem with building Monolith, because Monolith was kind of a multi-part upgrade. If I were starting from scratch, I would be spending over $1,000 in 2010's money on Monolith. The total cost is actually higher than what I remember. I just remember the key upgrades were $500 something. But in order to make Monolith from scratch, I would need way more than that. The Windows license and everything else puts everything up around the $1,000 mark, and that is in 2010's money. Factor in inflation, and yeah, we would easily hit 4 digits. If I'm going to hit 4 digits on something, if I'm going to save up and hit 4 digits on a new computer, it better be something worth it. But there's problems, there's performance problems with both major processors right now. Intel has its rectangular processors that warp because of the heat. And I seriously think that's going to cause mass failures in a couple of years, because physics is physics. I mean, you don't want parts of the processor running hot because the processor's doing this, because Intel got caught with inferior technology for creating chips. And so they were stuck having to make rectangular processors like that. It's kind of like when AMD was in this boat years ago with the AMD FX 9590. Had too many workarounds, wasn't good enough technology-wise. Then there's some problems with the Ryzen 7000s with some firmware and compatibility issues and gaming performance in some areas. There's some other things with that, plus the wattage is getting a little high because of all this power we're putting into these chips. Then there's the problems with some of the newer graphics cards coming out that are running a little too hot and pulling too much current through the Molex connectors and stuff like that. So there's problems with connectors melting and stuff. I don't want that. I'll wait for the technology to mature a little more And then there's the whole thing with graphics cards versus power supplies and the surge demand for certain high power things and things like that. I'm actually going to wait for the technology to mature a little more. If I built a system right now, the lightning strike took everything out, it would be a Ryzen 7 5700X based system with its 65 watt TDP, which would still be an upgrade over what I have right now with the Skylake. But why should I build a system? Why on earth should I build a system solely because I've been building computers for 20 years? When around the time that Windows 10 goes end of life, end of support, the technology will be more mature. Prices will probably have come down because it'll be an older technology by then. And DDR5, I can jump to the DDR5 era of things with 2020's Monolith. I mean, even case-wise, Fractal Design's not putting out stuff that like they used to. They got the Pop Silent and the Define 7s and stuff. Those have some design issues. There's a reason why, I still want an optical drive for older games. I might make it an add-on, though. I might just make a plug-in drive for any more optical drive stuff I want to do, especially how USB is getting. But I at least want some kind of port for like a fan controller so I can manually lock the fans, because I don't overclock, so I don't need a lot of cooling. So just want a lot of 140 millimeter air cooling. The fun part is Fractal is still making Define R5s new as like a unique item in their catalog. So I can still I just get another Define R5 I really wanted to. But I do want to be running off of M2 drives, so everything. Probably don't want to have a hard drive anymore. Then we'll migrate over, have plenty of space for SSDs, so we can migrate over the SSDs until we burn them out finally, because I have so many of them now. And stuff like that. But there's no real thing, there's no real killer product out there right now that makes me actually want to build a system and spend inflation, or should I say corporate profits, jacked prices. Yeah, go to my blog. It's been a while since we've done this. Go to my blog, multimediajay.wordpress.com, the category Great Recession Economics Charts. Look at corporate profits after tax. Corporate profits after tax has been going to Pluto since the pandemic started. So a little bit of unemployment in our self-inflicted recession, we had the lockdowns, but corporate profits are now increasing at a faster rate than they were before the pandemic, and they're at all-time highs. I was annoyed when companies were doing this during the Great Recession and then playing the victim. It's so hard. We don't have jobs. It's so terrible. Yeah, well, you're milking the hell out of American enterprise. And now we see today, post-pandemic, with this kind of stuff, post-pandemic lockdown phase, I should say, that's more accurate. Still some COVID going around, depending on what part of the country you live in and who you associate with. If you associate with Reds, you might have some problems with them pretending they don't have COVID until they accidentally give it to you. But with some of these BQ variants that monoclonals are useless against or whatever, Evusheld for the immunocompromised and stuff. Now, see, that's something I fundamentally disagree with. I don't think you should be considered, oh, you have to die now because you have a heart transplant or an organ transplant or you got cancer or something. That's eugenics. We don't do that in this country. So there's no intelligent reason for me to build a system in 2022. And if I do, it's going to be something that would be a secondary system. I'd be like, oh, it could be a secondary system. Yeah, but maybe I could get a Black Friday special or something on a 5700X system with DDR4. I could do that. And have a secondary system for the Windows 11 era. The big question mark I have, though, with all of this, the big question mark that I have with all of this stuff is, why do I assume the Windows 10 is going to go EOS at exactly the time Microsoft says it does? Windows 10 is just too popular. It's the new Windows XP. I guarantee you people are not going to want to get rid of it. Especially if Microsoft doesn't fix the issues with Windows 11 in the next 3 years. Is that what's left? It's about the life cycle that's left. Windows 10 is supposed to last until the mid-2020s. But Windows 10 is supposed to last till the mid-2020s, but I think it's going to go further. I really think that I should run Monolith as it is into the ground, wait for greener pastures, so to speak, or yeah, maybe make that 5700X system and then wait for the technology to mature. But I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of Black Friday deals or anything, maybe on Amazon or something like that. But with everything that's going on right now, with the stuff in Ukraine and everything like that, I think things are going to be overly expensive for too long. Diesel in the United States is creeping back up to $6 a gallon here in the Northeast because of some shortages and whatnot with diesel reserves and stuff like that people are freaking out about, trying to secure some more diesel. The Northeast somehow wound up in the worst shape out of the entire country. But this is kind of the side to all the so-called inflation that people are talking about here. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. Easy to consider when you have stuff like COVID lockdowns still happening in other parts of the world. But corporate profits after tax, if you look at the St. Louis Federal Reserve research graph, corporate profits after tax have been accelerating faster during the pandemic than ever before, and they're at all-time highs. If that graph was a bit flatter, I believe that it was all inflation as opposed to profiting off of this health disaster that has killed over 1 million Americans. So I would believe all of this stuff about inflation if it really were 100% too much money chasing too few goods. But it's not, because there's other viable explanations for what's going on right now. So with that in mind, there's other viable explanations for what's going on right now. And I don't know if I want to spend the money if I know the price is going to be jacked up by this stuff. I don't think it's worth it, especially for a system that is basically going to end up as a backup computer in the Windows 11 era. But I don't even know when the Windows 11 era is going to be. So it's all these giant question marks. I'd love to see how much performance I can push out of a 65-watt system with a 65-watt processor-driven system with a Ryzen 7 5700X. But would I just be building a system in order to build something better like a year or two later when the technology is more mature and with DDR5 platforms? I don't think it's worth it. That would violate another core rule that I tend to support, and that is not doing incremental upgrades. If you need something that costs this much, but you can only afford something that costs this much, you don't buy something that costs this much, because you're not going to get what it is you want. You're going to end up with something you're going to have to sell, or it's going to sit around, or you're going to have to repurpose. You'll eventually end up spending more than what you otherwise would have spent to get the same results. I've seen this discussion with cameras. It definitely applies with computers. I've seen it with cameras. It definitely applies with computers, and it's definitely in play here. So other than sentimental value, there is just no reason for me to build a computer right now. I would have at the most a backup system. And then what would I do with it? I'm having problems with CMOS batteries going dead in my project systems because I don't hook them up enough. Do I really need that happening with a system with a Ryzen 7 5700X? I don't think so. I think we need to wait and see what happens as Windows 10 approaches its EOS state and make much more intelligent decisions then. Well, what if we get another graphics card shortage? That's probably a better option. Get a new graphics card. And then graphics cards are transferable upgrades. Take it to the next system. Start with like a 3060 or whatever it is that I pick up on clearance before the 40s cause all the problems. Or maybe go AMD Radeon. Who knows? You know, I think there's a more mature feature set on the NVIDIA cards, though. So I'll probably stay on Team Green for a bit. But yeah, there's not really much of an intelligent reason for me to build a 20-year anniversary season. It's just the money's not there, and the return on investment's not there. I mean, I'll do some more tech stuff once I get over this throat bug. And I'll work with the retro setups, and I'll work with, what do I really want to have around here? What do I want to sell off? But it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to build a system and spend $1,000+ when I know things are more expensive than they otherwise would be for sentimental reasons. If you want to call me a failure because of that, that's your opinion. But I like being smart about my tech purchases because I know there's a lot of price skimming in the tech world where stuff comes in at a higher price and that settles down over the years. The thing is, you get enough mileage out of your stuff, that stuff that settles down over the years remains an upgrade as opposed to spending the premium to shoot up to the top. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to find value in my systems for reasons other than benchmarking and bragging about numbers. I'm about real world use and what you can do with what it is that you have. Not so much about being able to brag about the stuff that I probably spent too much money on. Sure, that gets you clicks on YouTube, but with YouTube's monetization setups nowadays, I don't think it's worth it, even if you're a full-time YouTuber. And there's some problems on Twitch, of course. We talked about them. They continue to be in a bit of a skid with everything that's been going on, but we'll save that for some meta discussion some other time. I should probably mention Twitter. With Elon Musk taking over Twitter, what do I think of that? I think Elon Musk is basically going to turn Twitter into the next MySpace. This is an ego project. Rich guy is going to get in on running a big social media platform like Twitter, and Elon Musk becomes the Rupert Murdoch of Twitter. If you remember MySpace, when MySpace was bought out by News Corporation, a bunch of know-it-alls thought they could make it better than the original founders and the current leadership. They wound up burying the platform, and it lost to Facebook. I think that's going to happen with Twitter. All right, what do we have? Nice. No dropped frames whatsoever. Looks like the crap that was going on has finally been fixed. Maybe I can do some gaming streams now. I'm mostly going to just chill some ESO in terms of video games lately. I just don't feel like doing much of anything else. Get exercise, yeah, and do the stuff my doctor wants me to do, although I'm probably changing doctors as a result of that whole fiasco with the blow to the head earlier. The guy continues to lack bedside manner, so he doesn't have any listening skills. And if your doctor isn't listening to you, you don't have a doctor, you have a preacher. And I don't go to doctor's offices to get preached at. We'll figure it out. So, yeah, I've been building computers for 20 years. Interesting. And what a 20 years it has been. But that doesn't automatically mean I should build something now just for sentimental reasons. We'll figure it out when the time is more appropriate. Time to relax and try and get over this stupid thing. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.